Hi, my name is Sean Panter. Thank you for coming to our YouTube channel. In this video, you're going to hear all about modernizing loan approvals using Power Automate Desktop and Robotic Process Automation. Our potential is limitless, but our time is not. I think this expression really explains some of the situations that folks find themselves in or that organizations deal with. Many people spend too much time at work doing tedious things that are very repeatable and not a good use of their valuable time. So we're limiting the potential of some of these folks because they're spending too much time on lower value activities, and we can't really leverage all the skills and expertise they have to the maximum. So to truly scale the skills and abilities and expertise of your team, you need to get them away from that monotonous, repetitive work. Let's cover off the agenda of what we're going to be doing in this video. We're going to start off with an RPA introduction. We're going to get into Power Automate Desktop and then discuss quickly some of the methods you can use to identify RPA opportunities. And finally, we're going to talk about the loan approval process, compare a traditional loan approval process with a modern automated one. And then finally, we'll provide you with a demonstration. Robotic Process Automation, aka RPA, let's do an introduction of this. RPA mimics the activities of a worker at a desk. We can build a robot that's going to do exactly what a person would do as they click through screens and execute their work. RPA requires specialized software. We leverage Microsoft's Power Automate Desktop to build all the RPAs that we deploy. You can apply RPA to structured, repetitive processes that don't require a lot of human decision making. These would be good candidate processes for an automation. You can train your own bot. So you don't need to be a professional developer to build a bot. You can do this on your own. Citizen developers can take advantage of this tool because it is a low-code tool. There are options as well. These are some of the capabilities or typical uses that you would see. You could do a screen scrape, for example, to extract data out of a screen that a user interacts with. We can complete data entry with robotic process automations, find, search, or process files and data, or even submit a form, capture the response, and move that forward in the process. So these are just a couple examples of some of the things, but there's so many possibilities that you can take advantage of with robotic process automation. Power Automate, digital automation meets desktop automation. The great thing about Power Automate is that it provides you with the ability to leverage the right tool for the job. So on the right-hand side, we see a cloud automation or a cloud flow. And cloud flows are able to leverage almost 500 different connectors so you can build a digital automation. This is where if the APIs are available, you can connect system to system or service to service and move data around, leveraging this collection of connectors. So this is a very reliable way of building an automation. You can see all the steps that we've mapped out over on the right-hand side. In our loan approval process, we're leveraging the SharePoint connector to wait for a file to be dropped into a library. And then we extract the contents of the file, send it into an AI, and complete the process by moving it towards the approvals, and then we kick off the RPA. So we don't start desktop automation until we need to. And the reason we do that is because we like to rely on cloud flows and digital automation because it's much more reliable and dependable. We only do desktop automation when we hit a wall where no integration or automation is available. So on the right-hand side, we see Power Automate Desktop, and this is where we map out the clicks and the interactions with an interface that doesn't provide us with an API or any better way to move data there. Let's talk about identifying RPA opportunities. RPA opportunities often present themselves as manual processes that are very well defined and repetitive. So if you have a process out there that doesn't have a lot of variance, it's very clear what the steps are, and it can be easily reproduced, this would probably be a good candidate to look at for an automation. Running the last mile. Many apps, large solutions, and even the small ones leave gaps. Think about that 80-20 rule. An app might cover 80% of the needs that you have, but that last 20% may not be fulfilled. So that app may not be covering your process the way it truly lives within your organization. So you can build an automation to take care of that last mile of coverage that you're looking for to get a complete process that actually reflects the way you do business. If you're working with gray, green, or amber screen applications, you can build automations to move data in and out of these. It's often much less costly and quicker to do this than other methods of integrating with these types of solutions. The back office is another place that we see a lot of RPA happening. So if people are churning through a lot of data, doing a lot of data entry, moving data through these back office processes, often they're very good candidates for an automation. And then obviously those error-prone situations where you have a manual process that you want to avoid errors and improve the quality of, that's another great opportunity for RPA. So these are just a few examples of potential areas that you could leverage RPA. Now let's talk about the loan approval process and contrast a manual paper-based process versus an automated one. So on the manual side, I'm sure many of you are familiar with some of the difficulties of paper-based processes. You may never know exactly where the process is at for an artifact. So you've submitted the approval, for example, but you don't know at what stage it's at. You don't know where the paper even is. And obviously there's many issues that can come about with that type of process. Approvals is another one that often we require audits or records of approvals and timestamps and things like that. And this can be problematic with some of the more traditional processes where an automated one provides you with other options. Double entry can be a problem. We've talked about some of the costs that this can bring, where people are spending time moving data manually from one system or app to the next, or from paper or PDF into another application or system. That can add a lot of cost and inefficiency to your process. Process transparency is another big one. You don't get this often with manual processes. It's hard to tell exactly at what stage something is at. You need that insight sometimes to make a decision. Reduced productivity is another problem with these manual processes for many of the reasons that we've already discussed here. And finally, mobile workers, they have a very hard time, obviously, with manual or especially paper-driven processes if they're working remotely or out of the office. So let's now look at the opportunities presented by an automation. So we can automatically trigger a process. We don't need a user to decide when to kick something off. That is just taken care of for us by our automation. We very easily integrate with apps as well. So we can integrate across applications, services, and data sources using our automation. So we leverage that reliable digital automation cases wherever we can so that we get the best quality of data and automation in our processes. We can reduce double entry with this automated movement of data. And the approvals is another really important part of what we get with Power Automate. We can very easily approve content from anywhere using Teams or Outlook, and we'll show that as we work through our examples in the demonstration. We can integrate AI into our processes, so we can leverage AI, build our own AIs, or leverage some of the pre-built ones Microsoft provides to enrich the data that we're working with. When we need to, we can involve people for exceptions. Let folks stay focused on areas where they're most valuable. Only involve them when we need them. And this moves us into our final point. Handle problems immediately. When there's an error or an issue that arises, you can immediately get someone involved to resolve this so it doesn't cause a cascading effect of issues downstream. All right, let's get into our demonstration. Here we are in Microsoft SharePoint. And as I described earlier, the digital automation, the Cloudflow and Power Automate is waiting for a file to be dropped into this library. So let's get started with this. I'm going to go into a collection of loan approval forms that are awaiting processing. So let's look at loan 6. So we can see this is from Richard Parker for a loan amount of $10,000. And this has been requested for education. So if we go back to SharePoint, all we need to do to initiate this process is what a user might be doing anyway. We drag and drop the file into the library. We could just as easily make the trigger, watch an email inbox for the occurrence of messages that have PDF attachments, and we can dial in on which of those messages we really want to kick this off from. So we have all kinds of capability to determine how we want our automations to trigger. So our Cloudflow is running behind the scenes, and let's go have a look at it. We can see this is a previous run of the flow, and I'm just going to walk us through what happened. So this is what happens whenever a file hits that library that we dropped the loan approval into. So we can see that whenever a file is created in this folder, that's the trigger. It's going to run this automation. We get the content of the PDF, and then we move down here and actually take the AI and run the AI, I should say, against the content from within this file. So if we have a look at what the AI found, so we can see which AI model we're using, and it is the RPA Loan Approval AI. This is an AI we created especially for this form. So you have the ability to train your own AIs. And then we get into what the AI found. So we can see that the employer has been identified as Walmart. And it tells us that. The other interesting part is it actually gives us a confidence score. So it's 99.5% sure that it got that recognition correct, that it found the employer correctly. So this is what happens with all the fields that we've trained in our AI. We get the data and it also gives us a confidence score. If the confidence is low, maybe we want a person to review that. So as the automation continues, we move into the approvals. And I'm going to go over to Microsoft Teams next. And into the Activities tab, you can see that I have a number of approvals here. There's actually an approvals app that I'm not showing you within Teams, but there's a really nice experience for folks to see all their approvals in one place. In this case, I just went over to my activity feed. I can see that the Richard Parker loan approval is sitting here, and there's a loan amount of $10,000 for this. For education. So it accurately took that information out of the PDF, proceeded to put it into an approval. And the approvals engine here is great. We can create some very advanced approval patterns. Maybe we want just one approval out of a group of people. Maybe we want consensus. You decide how you want those approvals to work. The nice thing is I've got it right here in my Teams interface. I could also work from the Teams mobile app. The next thing that's going to happen is the automation is going to continue, and there's actually a second approval. Because this was over $5,000, it goes on for a second approval. So we can see that in Teams, but I'm going to go over to Outlook because I would like to show you that this actually comes back to my inbox as well. Here I am in my email inbox. So we can see the approval has come in. This is the second approval because this loan was over $5,000. I can do this from my inbox in Outlook if I want. So that looks good to me. And we can submit this from here. Now our Power Automate desktop flow is going to run. And what we're going to see happen is the browser is going to launch our legacy form that we need to enter the loan approvals into. So this is an example of our robotic process automation happening right before us. It's taking the data that was extracted via the AI and it's inputting it into this legacy app that we have no way of integrating with. So all this information is input, and we even get this loan ID number. So this is a record that's provided to us by our legacy app. But the really great part is if we go back into the automation, what we're going to find is it actually gives us that value, the ID that was created in the legacy app, and we can leverage it back in the cloud flow. So we'll find that this is where we're running the desktop automation. And then once it's completed, it sends an email. And it actually gives the submitter of that loan the ID. So they now have a record that they can rely on. If they have any issues, they can recall that and get back in touch with whoever it is they need to understand what's happening with their loan. So this is a really great example, I believe, of getting the best of both worlds. We've used the digital automation where we need to, and then when we run into a situation where we need to run a desktop automation to input data into that legacy app, we go into RPA mode and use that capability in Power Automate. We've had a chance to see Power Automate cloud flows and digital automation. Now let's have a look at Power Automate Desktop. This is a look at Power Automate Desktop's main screen. We can see that we have RPA loan approval desktop flow among other desktop flows that we've created. When we go into edit one of these flows, we can see all the steps that we're automating. In this case, the very first action is where we launch the loan form. We can go through the rest of the actions that we see. And really, this is what we're doing is populating text on fields, press a button on the page. We can actually record the actions using this app that we would like to conduct over and over again with our automation. So they have a recorder that works on Windows or web apps, or we could actually build each of the steps one by one if we wanted to, just by dragging the actions that we would like to use right into the designer. So that's a quick look at Power Automate Desktop. So this is the tool that we build our robotic process automations in, and it takes care of running them for us. So that covers the demonstration and closes off what we wanted to show in the video. I really hope you found this presentation to be valuable. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. If you go to fidelityfactory.com, there's a contact form. And if you have any questions about what you've seen, reach out to us there. Thanks again for watching the video.